Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive and honestly kind of terrifying poll from the World of OS's community. They asked their audience a really simple question. Have you ever lost data because a storage device failed? We're going to dig into the results, the absolute horror stories, and the hard-learned lessons from the thousands of users who chimed in. Basically, we're looking at exactly how our digital lives get wiped out, and more importantly, how we can stop it from happening to us. Look at the sheer scale of this. Out of nearly 5,900 respondents, 46% said yes. So practically half of the people polled have felt that gut-wrenching heartbreak of digital data loss. And, one user hit the nail on the head in the comments. They said that the 54% slice who voted no, yeah, that should probably just be relabeled to not yet. Because, as we're about to see, digital storage is wildly fragile. And when we actually break down the how, old-school mechanical hard drives are the biggest culprits, coming in at 21%. But right on their heels, modern solid-state drives, flash drives, and SD cards at 15%. This totally shatters that myth that newer, non-mechanical tech is somehow bulletproof. Oh, and we definitely can't ignore the 8% of folks with such astronomically bad luck that they've lost data across multiple types of storage. Yikes. Section 1. When hardware simply dies. It is just a harsh reality that internal components degrade, or honestly, they just ship with unseen defects. Listen to this user's experience. They had a hard drive from a major, reputable brand slow down to an agonizing transfer speed of literally 1 megabyte per second, and it was less than a year old. It wasn't dropped, it just died a very slow, very painful death. And hey, if you think you can just buy your way out of this with premium gear, think again. Another user pointed out a totally sudden failure on a high-end 1 terabyte solid-state drive after just 12 months of use. The takeaway here is pretty stark. Absolutely no brand and no storage medium is immune to random, unexplained failure. Moving on to Section 2, Gravity, Cats, and Toddlers. Man, you really have to feel for this user. Their cat decided that Gravity was way more interesting than their digital files, knocking an external hard drive off a shelf and instantly killing it. When a mechanical drive hits the floor while those plotters are spinning, the internal read and write heads can crash right into the disk. It permanently destroys the data in literally a fraction of a second. Then we get into the absolute, unfiltered chaos of childhood. This commenter casually confesses to destroying a hard drive when they were just a toddler, and then doing it again when they were older. Other users jumped into the thread with similar stories, turning off laptops right in the middle of a boot-up sequence and completely bricking the operating system when they were kids. But sometimes we don't even need a cat or a toddler to ruin our day. We're perfectly capable of doing it ourselves. This quote perfectly captures that agonizing impatience we've all felt. This user accidentally snapped the physical SATA connector right off their drive, vaporizing 400 gigabytes of data in an instant. Just goes to show how one tiny moment of clumsiness can wipe out years of digital hoarding. I do want to pause here for a second, though, because these accidents carry real, heavy emotional weight. It's not always just about losing downloaded games or old-school assignments. One community member shared a really devastating story about losing an entire archive of photos of their late dog. A phone's micro SD card just randomly failed and corrupted the file system before they even had time to process their grief and back the images up. That right there is exactly why understanding these failure points matters so deeply. Which brings us to Section 3, Human Errors and Software Scares. We've all had that heart-stopping moment where your finger just slips on the keyboard. Take this classic, absolutely terrifying command line error. This user meant to delete a few specific XML files, but missed a couple of keystrokes and accidentally commanded their system to violently delete everything in the directory. Another user admitted to just typing the word clean into the diskpart utility, vaporizing their entire Windows installation in a blink. Whoops. And hey, even when we do everything perfectly, the software itself can totally betray us. The community shared some genuine horror stories of official updates causing catastrophic data loss. One person recounted a Windows 10 update that automatically replaced their personal documents folder with a completely empty OneDrive cloud folder, just wiping their local files. Another user got suddenly locked out of their own backup disk by Microsoft's BitLocker encryption without ever having set up a recovery key. The software that was supposed to protect them became the exact thing holding their files hostage. And we can't forget external software threats. As this user shared, a simple misconfigured firewall on their home server allowed a ransomware variant to sneak right in, locking down all their files and holding your game saves hostage. It really highlights that data loss isn't just a hardware failure issue, it's a huge cybersecurity issue too. All right, Section 4, the Great Media Debate. The comments section on this poll erupted into a really fascinating debate. On one side, you've got the hardcore defenders of optical media, CDs and DVDs. They argue these discs are immune to EMPs, and hey, if the plastic gets scratched, you can actually buff it out. On the flip side, you have the modernists championing flash memory and SSDs. They point out that solid-state drives have zero moving parts, making them totally immune to the drop damage that kills mechanical drives, and you never have to worry about scratching a delicate laser-read surface. But as this commenter noted, optical media is definitely not flawless. If it gets scratched floating around in a backpack, those videos are going to skip or just become completely unreadable. The counter-argument from the optical disc purists, though, is actually pretty brilliant. They argue that if you buy high-quality discs, burn the data at the absolute slowest speed your drive allows to ensure a deep write, and store them properly, optical media might just be your best bet for surviving a literal apocalypse. It really just comes down to what kind of disaster you're prepping for. Finally, Section 5, Hard-Learned Lessons. We have reached what is probably the most crucial takeaway of this entire discussion. Seriously, if you remember nothing else from this explainer, let it be this. Simply moving a file off your computer and onto a USB stick does not mean you've backed it up. As this user so wisely points out, it is only a backup if there is a main copy still sitting somewhere else. Redundancy is absolutely everything. To truly protect your data, you really need to embrace the community's collective advice. So here's the playbook. First, maintain redundant backups. One copy local, one copy in the cloud. Second, be patient. Safely eject your USB drives so you don't corrupt the file system by yanking it out mid-write. Third, if you use BitLocker or something similar, print a physical paper copy of your recovery key. Fourth, use software to regularly check your drive's SMRT health status for early warning signs of failure. And finally, please, for the love of all things digital, do not leave your CDs floating loose at the bottom of your backpack. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. If the device you're watching this on right this very second just totally failed, if the screen just went black right now, what would you lose forever? Take a second, think about those files, and let that feeling be exactly the motivation you need to go check your backup settings today.